Hey everyone, so in a previous video I showed you how to make a multi-enemy combat system for a turn-based RPG. Now what I'm going to show you is how to load in and out of that. So you're in one area, in this case it's a laboratory. There's a random chance and that there's going to be a battle. So the random chance comes true. You load into the battle, you defeat the last enemy, and then you load back to where you were standing in exactly the same location. So this is pretty standard turn-based RPG functionality, so this shouldn't take long to go through. You're going to see a lot of other code. Don't worry about it. That's for the other functionality. I will let you know what is needed for this simple task. And I will mention one thing though, I don't handle any kind of like visual transitions, so it's going to be abrupt. You're going to go from the lab immediately into combat, immediately from combat back to the lab. So in other words, you don't have any visual transitions. Sometimes in some RPGs, like the screen would like spiral, you have a visual effect. That's up to you to add. You can do whatever you want. You could do something like a transition, like you could do a simple, maybe like a black square that covers the camera, and it starts as completely translucent, and that when combat has, it becomes opaque. So that's really your transition because like you fade it out, you load the scene, and then that scene also has a black square covering the camera, and you reverse it. You go from being completely opaque to completely translucent, and you make that transition over a few seconds. So it's like a fade out, fade in. You can do whatever you want. So just so you know, in this it's just the abrupt cut, but you can add a transition once you've gotten this functionality into place. Okay, so how does this work? So when you're walking around the lab, you have a character, this cube character. So even though the rest of this is probably going to be final graphics with the exception of this entryway, he is obviously placeholder. So there's a script on him. Cam move. It's called cam move because originally I was moving around the camera, but then I learned how to use Cinemachine, so now I'm using Cinemachine to control the camera. So cam move is on your player, and we need to do a few things. So first of all, we need to let the system know that we're going to use code associated with scene management. So you have to add using Unity engine.scene management, or else it won't understand those commands. Second of all, we need a variable to be used to calculate the random number that's going to be used to decide whether or not there was a random encounter. So that's just an int, private int monster chance. You could call this encounter chance, whatever you want. The name itself doesn't matter. It's just letting you know what you're using this for. So it's private, it's an int, and whatever you want to call it. This one needs to be static. So private static vector3 current position. So clearly this is going to store the position that your character is standing at. This is important because this is how we're going to know where you should appear when you re-enter the scene. So in other words, you've loaded into battle, you've beat the enemies, and now you're loading back into the laboratory. Well, we need to know where you are standing. So this is the initial position. There's nothing magical about those numbers. It's just where they're standing at the moment. So this is the initial position. But we're going to change it with every scene, which you'll see in just a second. So at the start, we want to place your character there. So this is vital, not just at the beginning of the first time you load in, but after every battle, this is what will position you where you're supposed to be. Now, we haven't seen this number change yet, which we'll see in a minute, but yes, in the start section, when this object is instantiated, which happens when the scene is loaded, we want to put it at the current position location at those values. We'll get to that in just a second. Start coroutine, check for combat. So when this object is instantiated, we position it, and then we start checking for combat. We'll jump down to that, and then we'll come back up to this. So here's check for combat. So IEnumerator, check for combat. So typical kind of way that you start IEnumerator, yield return new, and then a certain amount of time measured in seconds. So yield return new, wait 4 seconds, and you can make this whatever number you want. I set it to 3. This is purely game balance. If you want there to be lots of enemy attacks, you might use a shorter number. If you want to ensure that there's more time in between battles, you could use a larger number. So this first one is just creating a delay. So here's that monster chance. Monster chances equal random dot range 1 comma 7. The 1 is inclusive, the 7 is not. So that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are the possible numbers. So monster chance is going to be set through 1 through 6. Again, you can use whatever range you want. If monster chance is greater than 5, in this case 6 is the only possibility, then scene management, load scene, battle. So battle is the name of the scene. So if we go to here, you can see battle. So battle is the name of the scene. And again, this would not be recognized if we didn't do the namespace at the beginning where we said using Unity Engine scene management. And then this last one says start coroutine, check for combat. Well, check for combat is this. So this becomes recursive. It's saying to keep running itself. So you've got here an infinite loop. So you start the loop here, but then the last thing the loop does is starts itself again. So this is how you keep checking for combat. So really, really simple, really clean. You just wait a few seconds, check for a number. If you get that number, then load the battle. So it's not rocket science. So I said we wanted to do one more thing here. So we said how at the beginning of the scene, when it's first instantiated, we use current position. So that means we're going to have to keep updating current position, and we do. So in the update section, current position is equal to get component dot position. So in other words, you're kind of seeing the reverse of this. This is saying whatever this value is, apply it to the object. This is saying whatever value the object is at, apply it to this variable. You're flipping which one is being set to the other, because with every frame your character is probably moving and that value has changed. So get component dot position, current position is set equal to that value. So those are the two main things that you're doing with the player. Now we just have to look at combat. So the only thing that we're really doing in combat that I hadn't shown you before is tracking how many enemies there are and then loading out when those enemies have been defeated. So in battle flow, we have this: public static int remaining enemies equals 0. We set it to 3 at the beginning. Now, if you're going to sometimes have one enemy or two enemies or three enemies, then obviously you're going to have to put additional controls. But for now, for me, it's always 3 enemies. And then in the update section, we're simply saying if that number is less than 1, so 0, then that variable, we're going to set it back to 3. That's just a precaution so that you don't keep cascading in and out of combat uncontrollably. And then start coroutine battle summary. Now, battle summary, this might seem like a waste to have a coroutine and only do that. That's because what we've done is we've carved out the ability to have an end scene. So usually when battle ends, you have, as the name suggests, a summary. You have you win, congratulations. Maybe you have some stats like how much damage you did. Maybe you have a rating for the battle. But you'll also have things like how much XP you got, what loot you got, was there a key item for beating this enemy? Did you level up? Did you get some skill points for leveling up? So that's what you do here in the battle summary. This gives you the ability to now pause and say, okay, let's do some stuff before we leave. Okay, so again, it seems like overkill at the moment, but once you build out that ending, then this makes more sense. So in here, you wouldn't just do a delay, which you'd probably do an initial delay, but then you would have, again, you'd have these text lines saying, earned XP, found items, and then another delay after that. And then in some games, they won't even load out until there's player interaction, like you've actually pressed the button. So you might want to put in a key control as well, if you choose to do that. Otherwise, you could just have a final timer, and then when that timer expires, scene management dot load scene level 1. So at that point, you have your loop. You now have yourself loading back to the level. And as I mentioned, that when it loads, that variable is applied to your character. And so now your character will be at the right position. So one last minor thing is the enemy. When an enemy gets defeated, so this script is attached to the enemy, If enemy HP is less than 1, then we take that remaining enemies variable that we mentioned and we subtract 1 to it. So that's really the only thing the enemy script does with this process, this particular part of the process, is that that's how you actually reduce the amount of enemies, is that when an enemy gets defeated, then that variable gets reduced by 1. And so that really gives you the connectivity between the script for the main character, the script for battle flow, and then the script for the enemies. So I'm just going to quickly run this, and then you'll be all set. I am going to briefly pause, go to the executable, and run that. And here we are. So here's your character. You can walk around. Got a revolving door. Like I said, most of the graphics are probably going to be final. The sign's probably not. That's actually just drawn. And there you go. It loaded. Like I said, there's really no transition. It's abrupt. It's just a rough cut right into the other environment. Okay. A few things I added here since the last time we talked about it. When you click on an enemy, you now have got this cursor under it. That wasn't there before. And then you can choose your spell, such as fire. You click on it again. You got some earth. Click on this guy. Got some lightning. Right now the lightning is casting shadow, so I'll probably undo that. That probably doesn't look right. And then we'll zap him. There's a brief delay. And there you go. It loads you exactly where you were standing. So that's about it for the tutorial. I hope that you found it useful. Like I said, these are more meant to be a combination devlog and kind of intermediate tutorial because I'm not going through every single step. I'm showing you just the relevant stuff. So I hope that you're finding this useful. And I think that's about it. So if you have any questions, just leave it in the comments. If there's anything you want to see, leave that in the comments. Let me know if you like the video. And please enjoy the rest of your day. And as you can see, this will just keep going as it should. All right, so please enjoy the rest of your day.